And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, attention, roll call.
All right, good morning, everybody. Monday morning, 8:05 live Eastern Time. And of course, for me, I'm in California right now, 5:05, early in the morning, still dark outside. Good morning. God bless all our active members are still out there with their boots on the ground. Thank God. Thank our friends and listeners on the podcast who are not cops, but interested in the podcast, and of course, our outside agencies. And God bless our retired members that saw the pension fairy yesterday. Tom Joyce, shout out to you. $20 already with coffee and donuts. Good morning. Glad to be back live. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Absolutely. And hashtag making memories. I hope you guys had a fantastic Thanksgiving. Went quick. Good Black Friday. If anybody was physically out there shopping, it's Cyber Monday. I'm sure people out there making their purchases. But I'm sure everybody's excited to get into this one. This is, this is about John personally, but really, John and I would talk about this offline. John, really, it's not even just about you. You represent everyone else that was put in a precarious position with this mandate, and they represent you. So, John, what are your thoughts? How does it feel that your complaint has now went public? How do you feel about that?
I mean, listen, I've been fighting this for 3 years. I've devoted, I don't even know, countless hours, to getting people free representation when I had lawyers that wouldn't even represent me. I've been working tirelessly to get class actions. I've been behind the scenes with numerous other people, getting data, getting up to speed on the legal ramifications of this. Really just pointing out the hypocrisy, not just in the immoral aspect of it, because I do believe it was immoral. But we see often we see often people hide behind the law. Well, I didn't do anything wrong, right? I followed the law. But here, actually, they didn't follow the law. They violated our contracts. They didn't follow equal opportunity law. They didn't follow the Civil Rights Act 1964. They didn't follow their own OEO policy. They didn't follow the United States Constitution. So I've been working for 3 years to really bring this to the forefront. So again, I'm not concerned with the outcome at all. This was wrong. This should never happen again. Everybody that was affected by this, I don't care your particular situation and how it turned out for you. You were wronged. You were wronged, and I think that there are legal ramifications that should be had, and I think there should be consequences for people who not only lied, but used this somewhat emergency that they painted to be emergency to further their own agenda. And we've seen it time and time again. And, I was a little disheartened. I'm not going to lie, a little disheartened about all the hate that I got immediately upon the New York Post article coming out. I didn't call the Post. They wrote about the article on their own. They didn't ask me for a quote. Are those factors in my case, the fact that I am a male Christian? Yeah, absolutely. Were male Christians targeted during the mandate? Yes, absolutely they were. And I hear, people that were wrong by this mandate. Oh, it wasn't just you guys. I never said it was just us guys. I never said it was just male Christians. I never said that females didn't have to succumb to this. I never said that Jewish people didn't have to succumb to this, to Muslims. I never said any of that. I said specifically, I was, based upon my faith, I was wrong. And I don't think anyone could deny that. Christian males were targeted. That was simple fact. It's a simple fact. Were other groups targeted? Absolutely.
Well, I think the bottom line is this. We have to get down to the meat and potatoes of the actual mandate. And you said the agenda, right? And that's really, I think, what we should explore is why. Why was a mandate actually put in place? And ultimately, John and I have spoken about this extensively offline and on the podcast. And I think we pretty much both believe, and the evidence is pretty prevalent, that the mandate was an opportunity to create a mass exodus, to discard, to abandon Tier 2, to remove the veterans and also to emasculate the police department, to remove the veterans of the police department who predominantly are white. And how do we know this? And you say, well, I was a history major in college. So in order to be a historian, you have to fact check things. And you have to, when you make a statement, you have to back it up with some form of evidence. And what did Mayor Eric Adams say, John? Mayor Eric Adams said that the mandate was a fantastic opportunity to diversify the police department. So, and the question is, well, what do you mean? How can we correlate the police department, a mandate, and manpower? And you see it here prevalent. Listen, by the way, shout out, good morning. I know some people say you sound better. Some people say you sound worse. I feel a lot better. This congestion with the cold really hit me hard, but that's all right. We're powering through it. John's feeling kind of crappy too. I'm sure some people here, you probably have it yourselves. So listen, to good health. Let's all work through it together. So John, what do you think about that as far as the mandate having the correlation to the mass exodus, which we see now? I believe that we're feeling a mass exodus for years to come, and it commenced with the mandate itself.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I like, again, there was a pandemic. People are afraid. There were rules that were put in place at the time, some that were legal. The mandate was one of them, but I believe some people had an agenda behind using it, right? Like, what's the old quote? How does that go? Never let a good crisis go to waste. And I'm not saying that was why it was instituted. I don't know the barriers of why it was instituted. I know that it was illegal from the get-go. I've been saying it's been illegal from the get-go. I know our unions laid down, didn't fight it at all. And I think that the statements that were made prior to it, I think the statements that were made during it and the statements that were made after it are disgusting. They're abhorrent. The fact that the unions are silent, that the media is silent, that most men that were put in this situation, particularly Christian men, are silent about it. I believe it just shows how cowardly we are and how emasculated we've been as a country. And, I think that, when I look back at that time, I was going out in the media, right? I was all over the media talking about woke DAs. It was great to bring John on to talk about woke DAs every time Alvin Bragg sneezed. It was great to bring John on, to talk about the open borders and the effects of that. It was great to bring John on for all of those times to speak about that. But it wasn't comfortable to bring John on when we talked to the mass exodus. You know why it wasn't comfortable to bring me on during the mass exodus? Because I said the number one reason that cops are leaving in the NYPD is because of the mandate. And that wasn't my own personal opinion. That was a fact. And the media didn't want to report it. Nobody wanted to report it because we wanted to paint Eric Adams as a moderate, even though Eric Adams is a left-wing tyrant who is more than likely corrupt, the first indicted mayor in New York City history, the first mayor in New York City history with 4 police commissioners in one term, failure after failure. And, I've been the first person to say it, and I'll say it till the day I'm dead. The mandate sparked the mass exodus in the NYPD. And in an NYPD where morale was already down, where people were already leaving, height of 2020, you look at the anti-police agenda across all New York City politics, New York City Council, the state Senate, the state assembly, our own governor, our own police commissioner. People were demoralized already. People were leaving the job already. And then they pushed this mandate down, this illegal mandate, and not only asked people of faith to violate their conscience, they asked everybody to violate their conscience. They asked everybody to go against what they know to hold to be true, right? The biggest laughable thing to me is the NYPD told me not to do it. I got sick. I almost died. I got sick. I still have effects from it. I almost died. I still have effects from it. When I went back to work, I fought to get myself back to work. I went from boxing 5-minute rounds and doing wind sprints in my yard to the next day, I was all incapacitated. 7 days I sat with pneumonia in my lungs. I couldn't get medicine. I couldn't get hospital treatment. I called Teledoc. Teledoc takes mercy on me. I'm begging for a Z-Pack. I saved my own life. I called everywhere. I went to the hospital to get a Z-Pack. No, I just called my doctors. Nobody would give me a Z-Pack. Hospital said I had drug-seeking behavior because I had pneumonia and I'm asking for a Z-Pack. I almost went out of the picture. And I go from that from boxing 5-minute rounds to doing wind sprints in my yard the day before I get sick to I can't even carry the groceries in my house. I can't even walk up the stairs. And I'm a shell of myself at that period. I still get my ass to go back to work. I'm still driving to go pick up medicine and things like that. And I'm worried when I'm out sick and meanwhile I can't even breathe. And I'm like, I can't even walk up the stairs in my house without stopping halfway through the stairs. And I'm still worried about the job, and I still want to get back, and I still have things at work that I'm concerned about. And when I get back, I have to go see the medical district. And what do they tell me? Oh, this thing just came out. Don't take it. It's the biggest hypocrisy. It's the ultimate hypocrisy. It's the ultimate slap in my face as a man, as somebody that holds on to the truth, as someone that you expect to have integrity. It's the ultimate slap in my face to one day tell me not to do something and the next day tell me to do something because a mayor told you to do it.
Well, speaking of hypocrisy, I think EC says it great right here. He says, how many higher ups got fake vaccine cards? Listen, we don't know, but that's also hopefully what is very significant in the importance of John's complaint. Let's get that data. Excuse me. If the accommodations were not arbitrary, and they were not if they were not arbitrary when it came to the mandate, especially for the mass exodus of the NYPD, let's get the data. How many white male Christians were afforded or allocated a reasonable accommodation? What was their rank? How much time on the job did they have? Were they tier 2? Did they have some ties to nepotism? So were they an executive? I'm curious. This is data we should get. What was their ethnicity? What was their race? What was their age? What was their time on the job? What was their experience? Were they tier 2? I think this is important to that we get this type of data. And if the mandate was completely fair, then that data should be released immediately. Soon as your complaint went public, John, this would be a great opportunity for the city, along with the NYPD, to say, you know what? John was an upstanding member with the police department. He chose to leave the department. We have data to reflect it was very fair. And here's all the people that received reasonable accommodations and why. And we're not hearing any of that. What are your thoughts on that?
There are people in litigation currently right now that have zero data from the NYPD. So all the people that are saying, "Oh, your complaint has no merit, your argument has no merit," where's the data? Where are the detectives? You guys don't get evidence when you make decisions. You guys don't look for evidence when you make decisions. I want to see the data. I know what the data is going to reflect. I know the data is going to reflect, 1, that it was illegal, 2, that it was completely discriminatory in many groups, including the group that I've mentioned, which is male Christians. It was completely discriminatory against myself. I know all that. I've been listening. I've been following and reading court testimony for 3 years now. I remember the time vividly. I remember exactly what was said to me. I have it all. I saved everything. I saved every email I have ever received. I save every email that we've ever got. That's where I get most of the data from that I post. Came right from the stuff that I received myself. And absolutely disgusting. New York City is not transparent. Eric Adams, this is the least transparent administration we've ever seen in New York City history. This is the least NYPD administration we ever seen in NYPD history. And again, that's saying something in a systemically corrupt department, a systemically corrupt city that's been for almost the entire history of it known as systemically corrupt and cannot be trusted. And now here we are in the data information age. We have now a police commissioner seated who likes to talk about how data-driven she is. Let's see how data-driven you really are. Where is the data? Show us the data. I want to see the data. Right? We know everything that the Office of Equal Opportunity, or whatever you want to call it, the people that were in charge of religious accommodations at the time, broke their own laws, broke their own rules, broke NYPD's own policy, broke the city's policy, broke the law, broke the state law, broke the city law, broke any law you could think of. We know it. Why do we know it? Why? Why? All you guys that cited Leviticus, what happened? 100% approval rates, right, for beards? 100% approval rates in the reasonable accommodation process for beards. What was the approval rate for people who requested a religious accommodation to not comply with the mandate. What was the approval rate? Is there a different approval system when it comes to the mandate as it comes to the beards? No, there can't be. But there was. There was, but there can't be. Why can't there be? Because by law, religious accommodation does not have a little star. It doesn't have an asterisk. Well, this happened, so we had to do this. Well, we had thousands of complaints. Doesn't matter. There's no little asterisk in the law that says, well, based upon this, we can now change the law. No, but they did it. And why did they do it is the question. Why? Eric Adams said it perfectly. It's an opportunity to diversify the department. Nobody asked them. What do you mean by that, Mr. Mayor? What do you mean by that? What demographics specifically are you looking to get out of the NYPD? What demographics, Mr. Mayor? Nobody asked them. Nobody cared. Rosanna Scotto laughed. They all laughed. I don't know. I didn't think it was funny.
I'm curious also. I'd like to see the data on what was the determination, what was the process or the system that was put in place at Office of Equal Employment Opportunity to cipher through the request for religious accommodations. Because from what I saw, it wasn't alphabetical order. Because if it was in alphabetical order, Macari should have been. It should have taken a year till they got to yours to decide whether you had to make a determination on your career or not. So I'd like to see what was the deciding factors, because I saw people with last names with the letter T, the letter S, that went right away. There were people with letter A as for their last name, and it took maybe a year till they had to decide that. So, what was the actual system in place of Office of Equal Employment Opportunity actually deciphering through these requests for religious accommodations? Do you know if there was a system, John? Has your lawyer been able to ask that? I'm curious. That's something that we should know.
Well, I'll tell you right now, right off the bat, there was definitely a system, and I don't know what that system is. I haven't read anything yet that said what that system was. The unions, the zero unions who have about 5 collars to their name, want to say, oh, if you were a worker, you'll get taken care of. Now, I think when you look at the mandate, you look at that the enforcement precincts definitely went last, especially the squads. And so this wasn't about safety, then, right? Had nothing to do with safety. And I had friends that got to retirement. I got friends that never had to make the situation. They never had to get there, right? They were able to drag it out until it ended, and then that was it. They were good. And I have no hate for those people. I have zero hate for them at all. But don't say a damn thing about me. I wasn't in your situation. You didn't get 7 days. You didn't get denied the first denial and then appeal and get it right away before they even put a process in place. And then they changed the process. You weren't in that scenario. So don't put yourself with me, right? Oh, you couldn't. No, I couldn't have done anything. I could have got terminated is what I could have done. No, I couldn't have done anything. My union, did the union tell any of you about doing Article 78? No. I never heard one word about doing an Article 78 until I was about 120 days past the time that I could file an Article 78. Shouldn't my union have let me know? They should have filed it for me, obviously, because this was a job action. This was technically discipline that came down towards me and my record, but my union never said anything to me. They didn't even let me know that I could file an Article 78 and fight against it. They didn't care. You know what they told me? Oh, you're a smart guy. You'll be fine. Yeah, you know what? You're right. And like I said, you're right. But we have contracts in place. There's laws in place. And you didn't follow it. And now it's time. It's time that people are held responsible for it. It's time the wrongs are to be righted. We have we have him on record in a court stand telling people, Mike Milkowski, the guy who signed off on everyone's denial in the NYPD, we have him on the court stand telling people that he denied you if you ever one time took a shot in your life. If you ever one time took a shot in your life, they denied you. So the same department that tells you that you can change your gender at will, you could probably change your species today in the NYPD, is how progressive we got. I don't know. Maybe we have a few furries. I don't know. But you can change your gender at will. You don't even have to conform to a gender. If you ever took a shot one time in your life, you could never backpedal on that. We denied you. Completely illegal. You know what they also said? It depends on how long you were practicing your faith for. Oh, depends on how long I'm practicing my faith for. Again, completely illegal because one, New York state law, they're required by New York state law to grant you a reasonable accommodation. Required. The only way that the NYPD or New York City could deny you a reasonable accommodation is if you are an undue hardship. What is the undue hardship that any of us caused? New York City never labeled it out because guess what? Guess what New York City testified to? Guess what they testified to? They testified to the only thing that doesn't cause New York City an undue hardship is allowing people to mask and test. But yet they granted accommodations for people to stay home. They granted accommodations for people to not be in public-facing commands and not deal with the public. And the majority of people got granted the reasonable accommodation that was you could continue to mask and test, right? Which made the most sense. But here I am in a non-public facing command. I don't have to have public contact. I actually wasn't having public contact. Public was still afraid at that time. And I was denied a reasonable accommodation. And what else did they say? They said, on the stand, by the way, this isn't me making this up. This is on the stand. This is in court documents. On the stand, Malkowski said, how long you practice your faith for, we will determine whether you give it to you. So I could change my gender, but I can't change my faith. I can't find God later on in life. I can't become a born again. I can't change anything. I can't one day find God. But then that falls on its face, right? Because I've been a devout Roman Catholic my entire life. So what are you talking about, Mike? I've been in a devout Roman Catholic. I've received every sacrament in my life that I needed to receive up until that point, including the sacrament of marriage. The only one I didn't get was the sacrament of death, right? It was the only one I didn't get because I'm still alive, Mike. So what are you talking about? And according to New York state law, you don't have to be part of a practicing religion at all. So what are you talking about?
I think you nailed it. I think the correlation between this whole identity movement within the police department and when it comes to beards in the police department in comparison to the mandate really highlights that this mandate was not purposeful for the benefit of the city, but clearly an actual agenda to create a mass exodus. And we can make that assumption based on all the evidence that we have here. And I think when it comes, I think it's crazy, right? You can say, you know what, you're a man. You can literally chop off your penis today, walk into work in the NYPD and say you're a woman or say you're something else. Or you don't even have to chop off your penis. You just say, I'm a woman. I want to use the woman's bathroom. I want to wear a female uniform. This is how I identify. I want a new ID card. No questions asked. You're not going to submit a form to explain why you became a woman or what body parts you actually removed if you did so. And yet, we're talking about you putting something in your body to make a huge choice on your life. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think that Office of Equal Employment Opportunity abused it. I don't think, when I saw, for instance, when I working at PSC 7, I saw some of my guys sitting there filling out the reasonable accommodations that you had to fill out. And it was pretty extensive, and they're filling it out in detail and writing what their beliefs are, and they're referring to the Bible and showing excerpts. And I said, I don't know, this just seems insane to me. This seems ridiculous. It should have been just a form, John Macari, tax number, request reasonable accommodation based on religious beliefs. And that's it. You shouldn't have to explain what your religion is. You shouldn't have to go in detail of how you practice it, how long you're practicing it, why you're practicing it. That's your business. The bottom line is you say, I am not succumbing to this mandate, and I request a reasonable accommodation based on my religious beliefs. I don't think you should have to disclose what your religion is. Why should I have to say what my religion is? In my beliefs, which are not any business to you, right? Just like HIPAA, shouldn't have to disclose your health information. Why do I have to disclose what I practice? Do I have to now disclose what type of sex I have in the bedroom, who I have sex with? Am I straight or gay? Do I have to release that type of thing? That's why I think this is absolutely ridiculous. John, do you agree? I think it should have been as simple as just a small card, John Macari, tax number so-and-so, request for account and religious beliefs. That's it. Granted. Why should you have to go into detail and explain, you believe in Leviticus or you believe in something else? I don't see if that matters.
The job of New York City and the job of the NYPD is not to determine whether you're faithful or not. No person on this earth do I give power over, including the Pope, is going to tell me what I believe in my head and my heart. Nobody has that power. Think about that, Eric. Could I sit there and look at you and be like, you know what? I don't like the way Eric looks. He's not really a Jew. He's not really Jewish because you know what? He doesn't follow the edicts of the Jewish religion. So you know what? Nah, you're not. Who the hell am I or anybody else to do that? Who am I? If some rabbi could tell you what you believe in your heart and your head, the conversations you have at night, when you pray, how you pray? No. Right? And according to New York law, they at one point realized that. At one point, they knew that. And they said that. They're not there to judge whether you're faithful or not faithful. I don't have to get Mike Milkowski or Tanya Meisenholder to sit there and say, oh, yes, John's a good professing Catholic. I don't need anybody. I don't need my priest. I don't need the Pope. I only need myself. And New York law upholds that. New York law upholds that, and they tell you don't need that. So what they give to your employer to say, well, some accommodations for religious will cause an undue hardship. You could cause and you could see that, right? I could see that. As a business owner, I could see that. There are some accommodations. I can't deny you the reasonable accommodation. Yes, I grant you the accommodation, but I myself, as a corporation, as this business, as this agency, we cannot actually accommodate that. We can't accommodate you for XYZ because of the undue hardship you're causing, and this is the undue hardship. The NYPD never told us what that undue hardship was. And again, how could John be an undue hardship, but Eric isn't? How could you approve Eric and deny John? How could you do it? You can't. It's illegal. It's called discrimination. It's the definition of it. You can't do it. So the only thing the NYPD should have been doing is saying, yes, we approve you. You're approved for masking and testing. You're approved to stay home. You're approved to work in a different spot. That's it. That was the only thing the NYPD should have been doing. There should have been, like the beards, like the reasonable accommodation process for the beards, which is not different than the reasonable accommodation process for the mandate. By law, there's one reasonable accommodation process. They should have did the same thing. I should have submitted it. I should have sat down before a panel, which I never was. I should have sat down. I should have been interviewed. They should have spoken to me. No, but they didn't do that. Apparently, Mike Milkowski testified that he read all 6,000 religious exemptions. There were, I believe, 6,000 religious exemptions, something around that point. About 6,000 religious exemptions, accommodation requests sent to the NYPD. Out of the 6,000, 176 were approved. But Mike Milkowski said he read every single one of them. I'm having a hard time believing it, but he testified to it. He testified to that. They also testified that there were 2 sets of books. One for the NYPD, one for DCAS. So they kept separate books. NYPD personnel. So the whole thing, at the face of it, completely illegal, completely arbitrary and discriminatory. Every single person that gave up their career, that was financially harmed in any way, whether you vested, whether you resigned, whether you were terminated, should be immediately reinstated with back pay also with money for your heartache and pain and suffering. Every single person.
You know, Patrick Donahue, shout out to you, brother, friend to the podcast. Patrick brings up a great point. What about the department temporarily transferring member of service with nursing and physician's assistant degrees to administer the vaccine shots? These members of services made over 100 hours a month to administer vac shots to members of service. Absolutely. That's why I've spoke before on the podcast. I wasn't looking to get the shot. I wasn't against the shot. I didn't put any thought to it. I was just out there working. I was doing my job. I would have never have went out of my way to get the shot. I didn't put any thought to it. But I walked into work one day. It was all set up, and when there's a muster room, and somebody came out, hey, boss, listen, we got the shot here. You want to take the shot? I'm like, what is it? I got the Johnson & Johnson. It's one time. I'm like, you know what? All right. Listen, I took 1,000 shots when I was in the Marine Corps. What's one more? I didn't put any thought to it. And then so I took it at that point, and right in the muster room, went to work. So I never put any thought to it. But and this is way before the actual mandate. But once the mandate was in place, and I saw what my men and women had to go through, just as yourself, filling out those reasonable accommodations, being forced to make these decisions, that's where I was like, wow, this is completely political. And, I at that point, I realized I didn't care about the science behind it, but the fact that you had to be forced into this position, I thought you should make that choice. If you don't want to take it, you shouldn't have to. I don't. And if you want to take it, that's fine. But I think I don't think you had to give any explanation. You just say, hey, I don't want this in my body. I don't know what it is. I don't want to take it. I don't think you should have to write down anything about your religious beliefs or medical conditions. It should just be other. I don't want it. And that's the bottom line. I can understand if you're taking the job, that's different. And there's certain requirements, qualifications. And if you're willing to take a job and you have to meet the requirements, and if they want you to take a shot, that's different. But you're already in the police department. You're already working there 18 years. You've been dedicated to the police department. They should be dedicated to you and respect if you want to take it or not, and you shouldn't have to explain it. And it goes back to what we always talk about. Like, I think you made a great point. What is religious? You know what? I'm Jewish. I'm born Jewish. I had a bar mitzvah, but I don't practice. I don't physically go to temple. I don't read anything about Jewish religion. But I'm still proud to be Jewish. I was raised in a Jewish family. A lot of members of my family who unfortunately passed were very religious. They ate kosher. But does that even matter? I met someone recently. I met a friend doing RVing. And he said, listen, we were talking about meeting up. He said, but I'll see you later because tomorrow I have church. Oh, so I said, where do you go to church? He said, no, we don't go to church. Actually, go to a church. But me and my wife are part of this Zoom thing where there's like hundreds of people on, and they actually have someone there speak, and they worship, but they don't actually go to a church. And they said, oh, that's pretty cool. So would that person not be religious because they're not actually physically going to a temple, but they're into the religion? What is religious? What is it? Is someone more Jewish than I am? Does it make a difference? Is someone more Catholic than you? I think it's insane to say how much you're practicing. Bottom line is, if you don't want it, it should be honored and it should be respected.
And Rob, another New York City police officer, another Christian male. I already had religious exemptions on the books for the NYPD for years, and they still denied my religious exemption. It just, everything, none of it makes sense. Nobody could judge what's in your heart and mind, and the law upholds that. But the NYPD didn't uphold the law. The people that were in charge to ensure the NYPD in New York City upheld the law not only knew they were breaking the law, they used it for nefarious gain, for other purposes. It's wrong. And everyone's like, oh, a lot of people beat me up last night because I said something about the Common Caucus. Listen, Joanna Ariola's been out there. She's on record. She's saying that we should all go back. But she testified last time when they were putting the new, they're looking to put the new corporation council head up. We didn't bring it to you because there's a lot of stuff coming on. But they're looking to put this other girl in charge. She's in charge of the legal department now. They're looking to put her up in charge of corporation council. And she said, some people got back, some people didn't. We just want a process where everybody could get back to work. But that doesn't include back pay. And I'm like sitting there like, what? How does it include back pay? We didn't do anything wrong. New York City did. Should have 100% include back pay. This shouldn't even be a question. And you know what, the head of city council? She's not concerned about that. Nothing makes sense. There's no process in place, and that they violated the law because, hey, we might have to do this again in the future. So I'm not really concerned about all the legality that happened, all of the stuff that doesn't make sense, or how this violated contracts. I'm not really concerned about it because we might have to do this again in the future. So I'm telling you, I'm beside myself with this whole thing. I'm absolutely beside myself. And then to think that the people that I've been standing alongside for 3 years are annoyed because I finally dropped something after 3 years of fighting. And that's relevant and that's valid, and they know it's valid. Yeah, it doesn't exclude you. It actually helps you. Right? And to me, it's like, this is the greatest and ultimate disgust. This is why this country is failing. This is why this country has been emasculated, because we can no longer tell the truth. NYPD and New York City mayor violated the law. Make it right. You support cops, you support firefighters, you support nurses, you support teachers, you support sanitation workers, then prove it. No, they treated us all like plebes during that time. All of their friends and whoever they wanted got exemptions, and the rest of us didn't. And then when you look at the numbers are going to overwhelmingly tell that male Christian officers were disproportionately affected. That's it. It's going to overwhelmingly tell it. Does that mean that it wasn't wrong what they did to everybody else? No. Actually, it's just as abhorrent. You know what I recommend? Start talking about it. Start telling everybody about it. I've been doing it for 3 years. It's cost me, I can't even tell you how much money it's cost me. I can't even put a number on it. And I'm not even talking about just walking away from the NYPD. I'm talking about after. Because why? Because I'm too volatile to do anything. Nobody wants to be. Nobody. Well, you think someone would hire me? No, that's why I started my own company. Do you think anyone wants me around? No. I went from being the best soldier to someone that nobody wants to hire because they're like, oh, this guy's a radical. You know why I'm a radical? Because I tell the truth. That's why. Telling the truth now means you're a radical in law enforcement. Upholding the law and upholding integrity makes you a radical in law enforcement.
Hey, shout out to Mikey G, metal detecting Long Island. If you're still here, brother, he said, I wish you would have me on your podcast to talk about this topic. Hey, Mikey G, we welcome all our friends and listeners on the podcast. Absolutely. We'd love to have you here. Contact us at the website, www.thefinestunfiltered.com, and we could speak about having you on the podcast. We'll get together, have a 3-way call, and talk about your experience, and maybe we'll put you on the podcast. So definitely contact us. So, John, I want to ask you this. What do you think about this? How do you think people that were in your position, that were not accommodated, that were denied their religious accommodation based on their beliefs and based on the form that they filled out, and they made the decision to take the shot, and they're still on the job? What fight do they have in this dogfight, and how do you think they should be compensated, if they should be compensated? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, well, they took it. That's it. Game over."
Well, what financial harm came to them at first?
What's that?
What financial harm came to them at first? If you were injured physically, I mean, listen. The bottom line is this: I feel for everybody. I do. I got hundreds of text messages yesterday or the day, whatever the Post put out the article. I've got hundreds of messages, some nasty, some nice, text messages, emails, DMs, whatever. Hundreds of messages. You know what most people said? I didn't feel like I had a choice. I did it, but I didn't feel like I had a choice. I get it. I understand. It was terrible. That was the feeling they gave us all. But you took it. At the end of the day, you signed off, you made the waiver, you took it. Is there a fight there? I don't know. I feel bad that you did. I feel bad, but you did it. You ultimately did it, and you kept your job. What financial harm came to you? if you were injured, where are you? How come I don't know your name? And if I do, why aren't you saying anything? Why haven't you been on the show? Why haven't you been out in the media? Why haven't I seen you on social media? Where are you? It's 3 years. What are you waiting for? You waiting to go in the grave first? What? If you were harmed, if you were physically harmed or financially harmed, yeah, I feel bad. I feel terrible for you. But you weren't financially harmed if you kept your job. And then you're sitting there and you're bashing me, saying, oh, no, you made that decision. No. I didn't make that decision. You made that decision.
Well, you know what? Listen, I want to, full disclosure, our friends that listen to the podcast, haters, trolls. John and I don't plan what we're going to say when it comes to the podcast. We come up with a topic and we discuss it. It's completely organic. So, John, your response, and I want full disclosure, is not rehearsed. This question he didn't know was coming. That was the truth. That's the bottom line, John. I think you're absolutely right. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that you did not make that choice. I think the choice was made for you. And that's my point for the people that succumbed to the shot, that were against it, that filled out that form, that requested a reasonable accommodation for their religious beliefs or medical accommodations, or they just didn't want it. Like, for instance, Marlon Bethel was asking about the science behind it. So he just didn't want it. He wanted to be fully informed and fully educated before making that decision, which I think is absolutely nothing wrong. I think that's actually very intelligent. I actually wish I would have taken a step back and actually thought about it. But for me, everyone, and that's why I think this is important, is that everyone's experience is different, especially John's particular case. The decision he had to make within a certain amount of days in a certain amount of time is different from some other people. Some other people had more time on their side. They were able to retire. So did they really make that decision? Because maybe they would have stayed longer. So everyone's case is a case-by-case basis. I think you're absolutely right. What financial harm did you sustain? And John sustained substantial amount of financial harm. He's not collecting the variable supplement. He had to make that decision, had to relocate his family and find a place that would accommodate him for not having the shot, because New York was not the place to live at the time. If you had those religious beliefs that were in a position to put you anti that shot, well, New York was not the place to live. So you had to make a lot of decisions. And I do believe those decisions were made for you. And some people have made the argument, and I've actually, I've had to defend you numerous times. Now, I never told you, but people were contacting me like, why would John make that decision? Because a lot of people, they said to me, well, I get it with you. I said, oh, you were attacked the CCRB. And they're like, but John had it good. He was in building maintenance. He had a take-home car. Maybe he could have put all that stuff aside and just take that shot. I said, but then we wouldn't be here today. And he wouldn't be the man who he is and standing on moral principle if he just said, you know what, I got a cushy gig. I'll put my religion aside. Are you a man of your word, or are you willing to sell out because you got something good that's self-serving? And, John, what are your thoughts on that? What do you say to those people? Because that's really what I'm hearing is, he had it good. Why would anybody give up that spot for their religious beliefs?
Exactly. Why would anybody give up that spot? Exactly. They're 100% right. Why would anyone give up that spot? People are like, oh, you left. John Shell likes to run around. Oh, I ran away from the job. Forget about it. I didn't run. I'm right here. I've been fighting for 3 years using my own name, putting myself out on the limb. I had a dream job. I was the first in my family to be an NYPD cop. I was in enforcement for 13 years. 13 years. Long fucking time. 6 to 2 at night, every night, all the time, working Saturdays, even when I had Sunday, Monday off. I worked most Sundays. I worked most Mondays. I was out there every night for 13 years. And my hard work, not anybody that I knew, nobody brought me in because they liked John. Nobody liked me per se as my personality. I say things how they are. I'm the same person I am here. People liked me because of my work ethic, and they knew I was real, and they knew when they asked me a question, I told them the truth. So people wanted me to work for them. I had an opportunity at the point in my career when I left. I could have worked anywhere. anywhere I wanted to for anybody. And everybody knows it. Anybody I know. My former FIO became the CEO of facilities management and asked me to come with him, and I did. And I had a dream job. I worked 50 hours a month, 60 hours a month. I enjoy construction. I enjoy being around tradesmen. I enjoy making cops' lives better. And I got the opportunity to do that. 50 hours a month overtime. I could make my own hours. I could take off when I want. And I had a take-home call. And I was, by the way, I wasn't even a top pay lieutenant. I was already in for the money. Who the hell would walk away from that? Who in their right mind would walk away from that if it wasn't for you're asking me to do things that make absolutely no sense and you're violating me? You're asking me to violate my conscience. At the time, I said a lot of horrible things. And I could say them again. I used to tell everybody, what? So the job that told me not to do something is now telling me to do something. I have to do it. It's asking me to violate my conscience, and they're telling me I'm not religious, by the way. I had a civilian lawyer in my office, high rank. She's like, you're not religious. I'll never forget that. I was like, who the hell are you to sit there and tell me what I am? You have no idea about me. You have no idea about the battles that I've had, the things that I've faced. You have no idea what goes on in my head every day. You have no idea what I do when I go home. You have no idea the person that I am my entire life. Don't you dare ever tell me that I'm not religious. And she went on to tell me how her husband was going to get overtime to deny religious exemptions. And I gave her the piece of advice. And all those that listen, most people know who she is. I gave her the piece of advice. I said, well, do your husband a favor and tell him that if he gets mine, to pass it to somebody else, because I am going to be talking about this and fighting this until the day I die. I said, so I'm just letting you know right now, do your husband a favor. If he gets my name, tell him to give it to somebody else. Let him get some easy overtime because he doesn't want that overtime. And it's a disgusting and abhorrent. So yeah, I who would leave in their right mind? Only somebody that really believed in what they were saying. Only someone who really believed in the faith and believed in upholding truth and integrity. You're asking me to lie. If you're asking me to lie, you're asking me to buy into something that I don't believe in. You could ask me to do anything. At the time, I was telling everyone, what if it was just the mayor has to put this finger in your wife? What if it was that? You got to do it. What if it was that? Why can't it be that? It's the same thing. None of it makes sense. None of it makes sense to me. It's all lies. Everything's arbitrary. Everything's capricious. They've flouted all the rules. Their friends aren't even under the same thing. What am I, a slave? Yeah. So why did I leave? That's why I left. Because it violated my right. It violated my conscience. I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I did it. I don't understand what's so hard to get about that. I really don't. It's like, oh, let me sleep with your wife for $4 million. No. I don't even think about it. Keep your money. I don't even think about it. Absolutely not. You're not going to violate the sanctity of my home and the sanctity of my marriage for money. It was the same thing. It's no different to me.
You know what the sad thing about this, John, is one thing I learned about the NYPD, and I'm sure it's other organizations, and I can speak for the NYPD because I was there almost 20 years. They would do it. They would do exactly what you're saying. And I learned that if they were told, listen, bring your wife to work, we're going to violate your wife so you keep your job, they would do it. And that's what this is. This is metaphoric and symbolic that if you don't push the envelope and you don't stand for moral principle and you don't stand for what you believe in, how far are they going to push that needle? We talk about it all the time. We see this happening right now with artificial intelligence and technology. How far are they pushing drones to eventually we live in a police state and they monitor you to determine if you actually went to the bank, if you said you went somewhere that you were going. We're talking about civil liberties. We're talking about freedoms in comparison to safety and actually the sanctity of the U.S. Constitution. And that's what this is about, is how far can they push the envelope. Sherry Albaugh, shout out to you, great friend of the podcast. She says, Eric, be sipping on some water all day long for your throat with a little lemon and honey. I appreciate it. I know I sound terrible. I'm working through it. This one really knocked me on my ass, but I'm working through it. Venus S. Ventura's, shout out to you. Coffee and donuts, $5 for the podcast. John, this is right to you. He says, you aren't the radical they are. Radically insane. I'd rather die a free man than live as a slave. Absolutely. Shout out to you, VSS Ventores. Totally. Forgive the language, but, and he spells it this way. Thank God. Thank you for YouTube. We appreciate it. He says, fuck him. PHUCK. Live free, die free. Shout out to you, VSS Ventores. Absolutely. You're not a radical. You've made your decision. You made a choice. And you stood on moral principle. And I think it's quite interesting. John and I have received so many attacks with this podcast for giving our opinion, and especially now that John's case went public and his actual summons and complaint. We received a lot of opposition this past weekend. And some of the haters are really getting upset by this. And one guy in particular went at it with John and myself on Facebook. He goes by Matty B, some total loser bum, which I don't even know. Getting upset that we give our opinion. And I said the bottom line is the reason why you're upset that we criticize the NYPD, the upper echelon, not the rank and file. We support the rank and file. And we actually support the leadership too. We want good leadership, so it's good for the rank and file. And ultimately, the byproduct is good for public safety. But we're critical. And some of these guys get real upset, like Matty B. He got upset because I said, you know what? The reason why you get upset is because you take it personal. You believe that when we criticize the upper echelon, that we're criticizing you. And it's funny, he said that John and I identify with the job and we can't move on. But really, this is a person who identifies with the police department because they take criticism extremely personal. And the fact that John is willing to go on the podcast and talk about his summons and complaint shows transparency. And John welcomes criticism. We welcome criticism here. It's funny how some people point the blame. They get quite upset when you talk about the job. So you have to ask yourself, really, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself who you are. What is your real identity? If you get upset that we're criticizing the job and you don't like it, then turn the volume off. Watch something else. You're not always going to hear what you want to hear. But don't take it personal. It's not a reflection on you. Unless maybe it is a reflection on you. Maybe you identified so much with the police department that you lost your own identity, and that's why you take it personal.
Yeah. I think the person said that now that we have a microphone, we bash the only thing that ever gave us our identity, as he has a picture of himself on the job as his identity. It's like, okay, dude. All right, bro. Yeah, I get it, bro. Thanks for watching the Finest Unfiltered, by the way, Matty B. But yeah,
what a loser.
We loser. But like, I don't even care. I don't even care about like those stupid thoughts. It's just a fact of the matter is, it's like, God forbid you point out what was wrong. So Crow Eater brings up another point here. The fact the job was allowing vested people who didn't comply with the mandate to return should prevent them from continuing to fight any lawsuits. The thing is, Crow, they actually didn't allow people who vested to return. They didn't. And Rob tried to return. He couldn't. I couldn't return. Marlon Bethel couldn't return because what they did was say, you could return. You could reapply, but first, you have to sign away your rights. So I could reapply and not actually get accepted, but I had to sign away my rights first to reapply. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. Actually, it didn't even matter for me because I was already past my time. I couldn't have came back. They need 3 months. I think I had 2 days. So I couldn't, it didn't even apply to me. And Rob tried. They denied him. Marlon Bethel, the union called them, said, all right, yeah, come. And they're like asking him to sign away all his rights to reapply. And he's like, I'm not signing away my rights. That's crazy. So no, those people, again, they made a choice. They signed away their rights. I didn't have that. And then other people came back and didn't have to sign away their rights. So nothing makes sense. None of it makes sense. So here's Cuomo. This is prior to all this nonsense coming down. This is Cuomo. This is before they Me Too him. This is before they get rid of Ed Mullins, who said he was going to fight this. This is right before this. Listen, let's see what Governor Cuomo has to say.
You cannot mandate vaccines because these vaccines are approved under something called an emergency use authorization, EUA. And by law, you can't mandate a vaccine approved under an emergency use authorization. So you can't say, for example, college students must have a vaccine. You cannot mandate a vaccine under an EUA. You can mandate measles, which had a full approval, etc., but you can't.
There it is. Says it right there. Says it right there. Clear as day. Clear as day.
Well, that's what I was saying, right? We're talking about the history now of the mandate with the police department, other agencies in New York City, the city's response to former Mayor Bill de Blasio, along with continuing and going even further, pushing the envelope and pushing the needle with Mayor Eric Adams. This is the evidence. We've been backing this up with evidence. That's why we're saying the NYPD is data-driven. That's one thing Jessica Tisch was right about so far in her infancy as police commissioner. She said she's data-driven. So is the NYPD. The NYPD is data-driven. They keep data on narcotics. They keep data on gang members. They keep data on use of force. They keep data on prisoners that are ill. But yet we don't have the data when it comes to how reasonable accommodations for religious beliefs are allocated, how they're permitted. We don't have that data. I'm interested. I would like to know also how many people filled out a reasonable accommodation, submitted it, and actually took the shot before a decision came back. That's other data that I would like to get also. People that actually decided to do it because they were scared and they were forced into a position to take that shot before a decision was actually made for them. So, Yvette made a comment earlier that that a mandate was actually administered with the police department because they knew that most men would not take it, which is probably true. And VSS Ventura says fear-mongering. That's absolutely what it is. Fear-mongering. And we saw how people succumb to it real quick. I've heard, I can't find the actual study, but I did hear through scuttlebutt, different grumblings, that 2% of people actually speak out from a group. So, John, you're part of that 2%. Marlon Bethel, part of that 2%. Absolutely. So the evidence is right there. The evidence is right there. Andrew Cuomo says it. You cannot force a mandate, especially this one, where it was not actually administered and approved through the proper channels. This was under an emergency. So, I'm sure a lot of people are curious about Tanya Meisenholder, how she ties into it and weaves into it. For our friends and listeners, if you saw the episode where we did a watch party of how Tanya Meisenholder talked about diversifying the police department, the diversity, equity, inclusion of the police department while she was commissioner there, really ties into it. She refers to police officers as knuckle draggers. So we're going to play it for you and then we'll explain to you what is a knuckle dragger. We would love Tanya Meisenholder to come on here and explain what she means, but it's inferred right here, and you should be able to pick it up yourself.
Thing that sounds very philosophical.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine some kind of knuckle draggers with 30 years in the job. Probably it sounds all a bit warm and fuzzy, right?
We have some employees who very much understand what we do, why we do it, why it's important. And then we have resistors who want nothing to do with it and don't understand why we have an office like this in NYPD.
Well, Jack Maple, who's a famed detective from this very...
Ooh, what was that? Well, are we there? Yeah, you're still there, right? All right, so we'll play the rest of it in a minute, but you hear it right there. Knuckle draggers. We're primitive. We're a lower form species. What are you talking about, Tanya? What are you talking about? Now, I'm in litigation, obviously. She's named, so you're no longer welcome on the podcast. Thank you. We'll see you in court. But, yeah, who you're talking about? Who exactly are knuckle draggers? Is that how you think? Again, this is, at the time, this is pre the mandate. This is when she is the deputy commissioner of equity and inclusion. Doesn't sound so equitable. Doesn't sound so inclusive.
Well, it's not inclusive. It should be diversity, exclusion, and inclusion, right? Because you're excluding, let's just call it the way it is. The bottom line is it was to emasculate the police department and to exclude white males. white masculine males, and in John's case, particularly white Christian males. Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. Typically, knuckle dragger is actually a slang term. It's pretty derogatory for a black male. But Tanya Meisenholder and this British police officer managed to utilize the word knuckle dragger. And if you listen to this, the watch party that we did, there's a prior episode. Take an opportunity to listen to this. But if you listen to this, they actually manipulated the word knuckle dragger, and they're referring to old, male, pale, and stale white males of the NYPD. And he says it right there. Knuckle draggers with 30 years on the job. Let's exclude them because they're old, male, pale, and stale. What are they really? They're white males, alpha males. And that's the bottom line. Patrick Donahue says DEI stands for don't ever inquire. You're absolutely right. So it'll be quite interesting. I would like to know how Tanya Meisenholder is going to explain how someone who is a knuckle dragger is inclusive or not. And what exactly knuckle dragger? Because we heard it here. We know exactly what they meant. What do you think her response would be?
I don't know what her response would be. There is no response to it, and the bottom line is this. During the mandate, they discriminated against Christian males. In this interview, she's specifically speaking about male whites because she goes on to say that she's trying to recruit a more diverse class, right? So she's already saying that they need to diversify the department. They need to bring in this 30 for 30. They need to make the NYPD 30% women by 2030. Law enforcement needs to make the NYPD 30% women by 2030. How are you doing that? How are you doing that? Why are you doing that? She talks about the importance of getting female agents who don't want to be cops to become cops. Who are you talking about? Knuckle draggers. I don't care what her response is because whatever her response is going to be a lie because we could clearly hear what she means by it and who she's talking about. Let's try to continue to play this because I think this is very vital, the next part of this, where she goes on to say that newer officers have a different set of values than the older officers, right? So Mark M. Rob on here, Marlon Bethel, you, me, all of us that didn't come on when this DEI movement started, we have a different set of values than the new officers, but never elaborates on what that means. So apparently, different set of values. I know that they're at a lesser tier and they make less money. I don't know that their values are so much less than ours or more than ours or even different than ours, but she makes the assertion that they are.
Once wrote that sort of 10% of the department at any time is actively seeking to undermine any good thing that you want to try and do.
I would raise it above 10% if I was asked that question.
Well, and it probably increases dramatically based on how new and innovative or just different each initiative is, right?
For sure. And then if you think about generational issues, as you indicated, or gender issues, when you talk about creating a safe space where employees feel like they belong, that doesn't necessarily resonate with the police officer on the street who's responding to calls for service on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, you've got people who get out into the districts, get out into the precincts, and that's where they spend their career.
That's right.
But I wonder sometimes if they're a little oblivious to see the change in the new police officers that are coming on board because it's a very different generation.
I couldn't agree more. I think the folks that are coming in.
I think they label it out right here. The bottom line is they want to get rid of the old male, pale, stale, white alpha males. They've made it clear as day. I mean, again, you got to look back at our watch party where we really go into depth. But listen to this clearly, what they're saying. They're talking about values. How do you know what their values are? Because their values, the values of the new police officers that you're recruiting, that you're bringing onto law enforcement are specifically targeted. You're targeting a specific type in this generation to fit this DEI movement. That's really what's going on, is to target a specific type. And I've been saying that for years. And Tanya Meisenholder gave me the evidence to back up what I've been saying, because I've said this before, and I go back to this. I'll never forget, I'm standing by the desk. We got all these new recruits who just graduated from the police academy. And one of the cops had said, hey, wow, boss, look, they just bring in anybody now, right? Because some of these kids, the way they were moving, like, wow, these are the kids that decide that they wanted. And unless I say kids, right? Some of them, they're 21, some of them are 25. But to me, they're kids. They're new on the job. They're rookies. They're bright-eyed. So to me, they're kids. And they get on the job, and right away, cops like, look at this. They just hire anybody. I said, no. They don't just hire anybody. There's a specific target. Meek, timid, and docile under this DEI movement, right? Because they want to remove that white alpha male, right? They find women that are meek, timid, and docile, right? There are women that have those masculine traits for law enforcement, but those are not the women that were getting on the job, the overwhelming majority. There were some outliers, but the overwhelming majority were Hispanic and black males that were not very masculine, kids that were kind of gamers, where they weren't out playing sports, not very coordinated, meek, timid, and docile. And you can see that in the recruitment process. It was specifically done by design. And Tanya Meisenholder backs up and gives us the evidence to show that that is a fact true, right? Because these are people of better values. These are people, right? Apparently these are better values, right? People that, identify as gay, identify as different ethnicities. I have no problem with gay. I have no problem with transgender. Be who you want to be. But don't tell me that means they have better values than a white, straight alpha male. These are different values and different ways to live. But how can you say that those are better values? That's absolutely ridiculous. That's very subjective by Tanya.
Yeah, Nick says BMS is the dream job of every young officer. Heroes galore. No, you know what's the dream job of every young officer, Nick? Well, when you have low integrity, Nick, you know what the dream job is? To be a lieutenant, to work for a guy with very little integrity that not only is going to allow you to curb stomp people after you punch someone in the face that's half your size and knock them on the ground and curb stomp them while your friends are holding them down. But then he goes to the Alvin Bragg and gets it so that you don't get charged and you only get modified instead of suspended. And then all of those IAB cases where, people allege you stole money from their children. People say you stole money from them. All the other cops say you probably stole the money. All those things just fall by the wayside, and you work around in an environment where no one's looking at you because you have such low integrity that you work for people and they see you as a useful resource. Yeah, so that's actually your dream job. But no, I meant as far as I made my own hours. I was the integrity control officer. I was no longer in an enforcement environment. And that was due to the politics of your boss. And that was due to the politics of the New York City Police Department. That I said, you know what? It is what it is. And by the way, guy, again, I didn't know anybody, right? I didn't ride anybody's coattails like the rest of you. So, yeah, shout out to you. You got away on that one. Your time will come. With life or the next. Doesn't really matter, Nick.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Crowley says, hey, John, that lieutenant is now full duty. Yeah, absolutely. That we've highlighted the standard with the police department, and we said it's a 3-tiered system. And the evidence, again, we talk about being evidence-based and backing it up with evidence. The evidence is there. You have the upper echelon, and those are tied to it with nepotism, general population, and then khaki pants, right? Because that lieutenant was wearing khaki pants. How is that lieutenant full duty? That lieutenant is full duty after stomping on someone's head. And yet Juan Perez, who is a friend to this podcast, we support Juan Perez. Juan Perez is now in retirement. God bless him. I hope he's enjoying it. And we'll speak to him. By the way, I haven't had a chance to speak to him in a couple of days. But Juan Perez was convicted of a misdemeanor assault for a 911 job he was summoned to. He overcame resistance from an emotionally disturbed perpetrator that was choking him. And the only thing Juan Perez did wrong was actually go to work that day, because what he did was he helped the city. He maintained public safety, and he deployed a couple of strikes. And one of those strikes caused a broken nose to that perpetrator. But you know what? That perpetrator tried to choke a police officer. He didn't stop on his head. He took necessary action. And he was convicted of assault. And we see a complete different set of standards here because Juan Perez didn't have any ties to nepotism. And this lieutenant in particular, this lieutenant is full duty. He was modified. He was not suspended. And he's full duty. Compare that to other situations, other police officers within the New York City Police Department who've been measured by a different metric and a different set of standards. So you can't deny that there's a 3-tier system of the police department as we speak. It's going on right now. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's arbitrary, like I said, and the get stuff done and call it arbitrary and capricious. Call it discriminatory. That's it. The only reason Nick is good is because Nick will do whatever they say because he has zero integrity. That's why the only reason Nick is still around. So let's get that out there, Nick. So dream. And by the way, your khaki pants are way too tight. Loosen them up. Start wearing bigger shirts, bro. So and Rob goes that when he tried to return, they said that because he was past his year, Rob. They said they would take him back, but they would have to reinstate him as a rookie. He would have to start over at base pay, all the way back to rookie. And then the cop that was in charge of his reinstatement wanted him to send an email stating that he didn't want the job back because of personal reasons. This is somebody on your job, right? Somebody on your job is asked, this is how much we look out for each other. Send us back this email that you don't want it for personal reasons, not because the job harmed you, but let's get that on record so when you sue later on. Obviously, Rob told him to where to go, but that's what was going on during that time. And yeah, they go on to talk about how the upper echelon is too male, too pale, too stale. So there you go with the male discrimination. Clearly, when you look at the amount of the denials that were denied, it's overwhelmingly going to be male Christian men. So that's it. I mean, the thing's illegal. Everybody was harmed, whether you were Christian, whether you were female, whether you were Jewish, whatever you are, whatever your background was. We were all harmed. It was all wrong. People need to start talking about it. That's it. Need to wake up and start pushing and get out there and speak out. I've been doing it for 3 years at my own peril, right? At times, most of the people that I'm speaking up for are against me. So I don't feel bad. I could care less at this point. I like I said, this is wrong. I'll be talking about this till the day that I'm dead, regardless of how this turns out. It was wrong. It was illegal. Every single thing it was. I'm willing to debate anybody at any time. And I pray to God I get a chance to sit on the stand and be cross-examined by the New York City. I pray to God. I hope that comes true.
Absolutely. Here's the bottom line, right? The bottom line is this. If you're outspoken about this, John, people are going to say, you know what? He's radical. He's crazy. He's insane. If you succumb to the mandate and you're still working and you're unhappy, people will say, you know what? He's too meek. He's too timid. You can't win. The bottom line is you can't win in this life. If you're too strong, people they don't stand with you. If you're too weak, they have stuff to say about you. So you have to do what's best for you. And that's the beauty about getting older. And, sometimes, you say to yourself, what's the best generation in your life, right? Is it your 20s? Is it your 30s? Is it your 40s? And I always say the older we get, the better we get and the wiser we get. Because when you're young, you go to a party and you ask yourself, you know what? I hope everybody likes me here, right? You want to be dressed nice. You want to look good. You want to make a good impression. Like, man, I hope everyone likes me here. But when you get older, you get wiser, and you walk into a party, and you know what you say to yourself? Who do I like? Who do I like here? So that's how I live my life. I don't care what anybody says about me. People ask me all the time, how do you guys do this podcast? I mean, you read some of these contents, you read some of the comments, and we get a lot of hate. Believe me, I don't know if you guys read it. Our friends and listeners, we get a lot of hate on this podcast. And sometimes people say to me, like, wow, I don't even get, why do you guys get so much hate? You're just giving your opinion. You if anything, you're more supportive than the rank and file than anyone else is. And I said, the reason why we get so much hate is because people identify themselves with the police department. And every time we are critical of the police department, when it comes to upper echelon, they look at themselves in the mirror and they see themselves on the receiving end of that criticism. So don't identify. You can't love something that doesn't love you back. Do your job to the best ability. Love your profession, yes, but don't love the job, because believe me, if you're on your post and God forbid you lose your life and you meet your demise, that next day there'll be a process trying to find someone to fit your role, to fit your spot. So we talk about loving each other and supporting each other, and we talk about it all the time in this podcast. The only time fellow law enforcement supports each other is in death, right? So you know what? Support John in life, because John is representing the other cops out there right now and other agencies of New York City that were violated. Their rights were violated. He represents you, so you should represent him. We need to stand together. This idea that someone's radical because they're speaking out or they're insane, you should be able to speak your mind. Isn't that what the First Amendment was about? And if that's what it means to be radical, then so be it. We'll stand here proud. We'll be radical.
Yeah. Before we get off this topic, just want to play 2 videos for you. So this one, hard to find, so I apologize for the grainy video. Very hard to find. I had to actually go back through my Twitter to find this, and this was before I was pretty good at doing social media. But this is height of the mandate. This is June of 22, height of the mandate. I'm already gone. I believe a lot of us are already gone. I believe Marlon Bethel's fired already. I believe M. Rob is also gone. But still officers in denials at this point. And this is as I was talking about earlier, the media would call me if Bragg sneezed wrong. But when it comes time for the exodus, they get other cops on there that don't say a word about it. They won't talk about the mandate at all. Every time they called me, they asked me not to speak about the mandate. And I said, absolutely not. Go get somebody else. And they did. And then those people went on there and gave every other reason except for the number one reason that thousands of cops left the NYPD, which was the mandate. So shame on you. Shame on you guys. I remember that. I remember who you were. We had conversations about that. And I'll remind you again, if you got anything to say about anything too. So here we go. Here's Eric Adams at that time. He says that he lays it out perfectly here. Tells you perfectly.
There are reports that over 500 cops are resigning and over 1,000 are retiring. Does that concern you?
No, it does not. New York City Police Department is an amazing career. You know, I know it firsthand. And we're going to find young men and women who are going to want to be a member of New York City finest. This is a great opportunity to diversify the department.
It's a great opportunity to diversify the department. What did you mean, Eric? What did you mean?
You know exactly what he means. You know what he means? Let's get rid of the knuckle draggers. We got Tanya Meisenholder out there trying to diversify the police department through this DEI movement. We're getting rid of the knuckle draggers. And you know who the knuckle draggers are? You, John. White alpha males. That's who the knuckle draggers are. And then some other tier 2 males, right? Because Eric Adams says he doesn't discard people, and he loves immigrants. And because immigrants are New Yorkers, they're all New Yorkers. Well, Marlon Bethel, he's an immigrant. His family came to this country through legal immigration. His family wanted to be American citizens. Marlon Bethel was a New York City police detective who still does fantastic investigations. He was discarded because he was an alpha male under tier 2. So we're not saying that it wasn't just male Christians. But these are the men that fall under knuckle draggers. That's what they did. Get rid of the knuckle draggers and let's diversify the police department with different faces. No more old male pale and stale.
So, and then here you go. Eric Adams, who fancies himself a Christian. I don't ever see that he is. I believe he's
and
oh my
dealt with that virus, responding every day on the
jump sometimes. But he fancies himself a Christian. He fancies himself a Catholic. He goes to church. But he's a blasphemous. It's completely blasphemous. So this is the time period. I'll just bring you back. This is post. He actually ends the mandate now. Stops firing cops and firemen and sanitation workers. Stops firing everybody. And everybody's like, well, are you going to reinstate everybody? You going to reinstate everybody? And this is right on the heels of New York City settling a $500 million lawsuit. And you know what that lawsuit was about? It was about people that took an exam to become a teacher, but the exam never told those people that you had to be literate to become a teacher. So they gave them each $2 million and a pension. They gave people that never worked a day $2 million and a pension because they took a test that they didn't know they had to be literate to pass, to teach children. And Eric Adams gave in. He gave them that money. At the same time that people are telling all of us, well, we don't have enough money to give you back. You guys made your decision, right? At the same time, he's spending $5 billion on illegal immigrants who are here committing crimes. At the same time that Eric Adams is telling you, what is he telling you? If you can't work, you're being exploited. Let them work. Let them work. Who's he talking about? He's not talking about you. He's not talking about you who served New York City for years, who lived in the city for years, who paid into the system for years, who worked during the pandemic when everybody hid in their house, including Eric Adams, when he was making his makeshift masks out of napkins. You were out there every day, but they don't got no money for you. You're not exploited. Here's Eric Adams. He is the moderate Eric Adams. He is MAGA Eric. This is pre-indictment Eric. Here he is.
Oh, and dealt with that virus, responding every day on the ground. This was real. If we didn't have that vaccine and we didn't have those mandates, we would have lost so many more lives. And so New York has stepped up. They said, we don't want to do it. I don't want to get injected. I don't want to do this. This is new, but they stepped up anyway. And so those who made the determination that, no, I still want to come into a work environment and I'm not going to be vaccinated. No, I want to still ride the trains. I want to do whatever I want. That just wasn't right. That wasn't right. And they made a decision. And the law was on our side that said we could mandate. And so they were removed. Now that we're seeing a normalization of COVID, there may be another time that we're going to have to do mandates again because these viruses are not going away. We're dealing with a whole new environment of what we're fighting against some of these viruses. They made the decision not to be vaccinated. They lost their jobs. We see the need now to lift the mandate, but those who lost their jobs could reapply for their job, but they got to reapply just like everyone else.
What about pay? Would they get back pay?
Nope. Their back pay is the pay they got when they got another job somewhere. I mean, New Yorkers should not be paying for someone that wasn't working. And they made a decision. People made a decision to not take the vaccine when they were supposed to. And now keep in mind, there were some people who applied for city work and was told you have to be vaccinated to get the job. And they took the job with that understanding and still say, no, I don't want to be vaccinated. So no, you have a right to come back and be employed and file for your job again. But no, there's not going to be any back pay. We're going to try to be as fair as possible. We listened to a large number of reasonable accommodations. We bent over backwards to understand the needs that people have. And the goal was not to be punitive. It was to be protective. We had to protect city workers, first line responders, and deal with a crisis that we were facing. I lost 5 friends in a short period of time due to COVID. One of them being Roy Hastick, who was my mentor. I lost a rookie cop. She was one of my rookie cops that I trained, a young lady who died from COVID. And so all of us, everyone on this Zoom can tell you about a death that they saw. I remember Ingrid, my chief advisor, who has been with me throughout my political career. I was really concerned about her and what she experienced during COVID, her and her husband and her son. And so this was real. And your healthcare professionals on here, you remember those calls we did, JR, with them, explaining to us what we were facing?
All right, enough of this mush mouth.
Listen, bottom line is this. We're not going into the science of this, right? Obviously, there's YouTube restrictions we don't want to be taken down. Right? We're talking about how New York City workers, their rights were violated. Talk about Article 78. We talk about, you can clearly see it, that old male pale stale have been pushed out. The alpha white male has been referred to as knuckle draggers. Crazy 10-7, you're absolutely right. Get this bum out. Snake Plissken, shout out to you. $4.99 to the podcast, coffee and donut. He says great content today. Absolutely. This is great content. Whether you took the shot or not, everybody should listen to this. This is what's important. We should all stand together. We should support each other. We talk about camaraderie. We talk about morale. This is the time that we should step up and take care of one another, because Eric Adams completely discarded New York City police officers like they're nothing. Trained police officers that had their boots on the ground, during the height of COVID. And you know what? Eric Adams doesn't know the science either. You know, if Eric's going to say this, he should be able to back it up. If you're going to say we saved lives, well, how many lives were saved and how were they saved? But he can't tell you that. He can't give you the science behind that. And the reality is, good NYPD police officers were discarded. Good New York City agency workers from other agencies were discarded by Eric Adams. He had a great opportunity. You know, his predecessor, former Mayor Bill de Blasio, initiated this mandate, but Eric Adams took it to the touchdown. He took it to the goal line. Eric Adams had a great opportunity to say, listen, this was under former Mayor Bill de Blasio. I'm going to protect the sanctity of New York City law enforcement profession, the men and women that had their boots on the ground, and protect them. But that's not what he did. He took the ball to the touchdown. He took it to the goal. And that's what he did. He discarded. And the way he's saying it, I mean, it's so insulting and disrespectful to men and women that were out there doing their job. What does he say? Oh, no back pay. You were out there working. That's funny, because they couldn't get jobs. If they stayed in New York, because they did not succumb to the mandate, because they couldn't get shots, they couldn't even get jobs. They couldn't even go inside restaurants. They couldn't get jobs. They were out of work. So Eric Adams right there is completely lying, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. But this is pre-indictment Eric. Post-indictment, MAGA Eric, you'll hear a different response. And that's why I always say the tale of two Erics. You could pull two videos side by side, and he's talking about the same thing, and just a complete different story. And it's an insult. It should be an insult to every NYPD law enforcement officer, even if you agreed. Listen, some people are for the mandate and they support it. That's fine, but you should support your fellow brothers and sisters and say, hey, look to your left and look to your right. You lost some fantastic law enforcement professionals because of this mandate, who are no longer employed by the police department, who don't have that ability to pass their knowledge and pass on to the torch to the young that come up, because they don't want that. They don't want the knuckle draggers, because you have different values.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Dude's a loser. I honestly. So that's it. I'm not going to go any further in depth about the case. You know, the thing's out there. A lot of of you guys reached out to me, said my address is on there. Yeah, I don't care. I mean, the New York City Police Department, they're paid goons. They gave it out to their criminal friends. My address is public information. Bring it. My address has been out there. You all ran my name illegally in department computers, found out where I live, what I do for a living, all these other things. You gave it out to all your criminal buddies and yourselves. I'm not worried about it anymore. I've been out here in the public eye for 3 years. I don't care. I live in Florida for a reason now. And that's another thing that people, you live in Florida now. Go away. It's like the only reason I live in Florida is because of this. I would have never left New York City. Never. I had zero. I didn't get a bigger house. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to live right where I wanted to live for the rest of my life. My parents were buried a few blocks away from me. I wanted to stay right there for the rest of my life. This caused me to have to leave because I had no choice. Because like you said, Eric, I couldn't get a job. I couldn't work. I couldn't. The job I would have got, I had to come to Florida. And even here, I had to start a company because everybody was asking for something. That I had to prove that I did something. Everybody. Even though Ron DeSantis was all over TV telling you something else, wasn't true. Wasn't true. Wasn't exactly the free state of Florida at that moment. So I had absolutely no choice. But yeah, I pay taxes in New York. I'll be talking about New York as much as I want. I'll talk about anything as much as I want. And that's it. So it's time. It's time for all of us. It's time for M. Rob. It's time for Marlon Bethel. It's time for Michael Caine. It's time for all the fire departments. It's time for Danny Holgow in New York City Sanitation. It's time for all those people the wrong that was done to them to be righted. If you got $5 million to give to people that never worked a day in this system, you could make it right, Eric. Make it right. Make it right, or else we're going to keep coming. We're going to keep dropping lawsuits. We're going to keep pushing down until this is righted. And this is righted. And hopefully, for your guys' sake, you get the case thrown out on a technicality. Hopefully. Because if you get me on the stand, you're losing and you know it.
Hey, Tabitha, shout out to you. Tabitha Foster says, you should have used the mailing address. The court takes a mailing address like a post office box as long as it's a place where you can receive court updates. I'm glad you're speaking out. Absolutely not. Tabitha, thank you so much for always being here. I know you have your own issues, so in the police department. But, bottom line is the NYPD already knows exactly where John lives, knows exactly where I go. They've released a lot of information out to the public. There's a fake moniker known as All Cops Are Woke with members of the service behind that fake moniker that threaten death to our children, pointing a map to exactly where we live. You know what? I'm with you, John. We always say it. Bring it. No problem. The khaki pants unit summoned us to the tough streets of Wanta. Unfortunately, we couldn't make it. We're out of the country right now, but maybe one day we could meet up and have a nice cigar together and a cup of coffee. I'm sure their response would be much different. But the bottom line is this: we're not running anywhere. We're in the face of adversity. We're in the public. We're not shying away. But Tabitha, thank you for the support. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So that's it. The data's on my side. The data will prove it. Release the data. That's it. End the story. So, all right, let's get on to a different topic. Sal Greco on here this morning. Appreciate you for being on here. Sal Greco says, because it is hot topic news. He says Eric Adams wishes he was Hunter Biden this morning. So, I mean, again, I don't think anybody was shocked that Hunter Biden got a full pardon. I mean, I knew that was coming. Sal knew that was coming. I think we all knew that was coming. Although we heard for months lies that Joe Biden wasn't going to pardon his own son. I mean, nobody believed that. And it's the same thing like when you hear Eric Adams talk about 10 straight months. First it was 9, it was 7, it was 6, it was 5. All these straight months of crime being down. Well, apparently the NYPD just went back and started to do some early upgrades. And guess what? Actually not true. Crime hasn't been down for all those months. So, and guess what? Nobody on here shocked about that either, right? Because what did we say? By the end of the year, all of the crime that they're touting has been down will not be down. It will all be up, just like it's been every other year of the Eric Adams administration, because crime is up. Jessica Tisch, all over the media, we know arrests are up and crime is down. No, Jessica, no. Arrests are up and crime is up. Stop being honest. But it looks like the new boss is just the same as the old boss. So that's what it appears to me.
Well, that's why I said it's the same horse, different color at this point. I saw Jessica Tisch first when she was put out to the press. And Eric Adams had informed the public that Jessica Tisch would be taking the job as police commissioner. The first thing she said was, crime is down to pre-pandemic levels. First lie, started gaslighting 101. And then again, she goes on to say, arrests are up and crime is down. Second lie. So, well, there's actually more lies also. But just to gaslight continue. So I said, I put out a tweet. I said, okay. I guess we're back to the normal program. Nothing has changed. So, yeah, listen, Patrick Donahue says, John, I repeatedly told you while you fought the vaccine, open an OnlyFans account, but you were too stubborn. Hashtag EDM. John, you could have been doing OnlyFans. See, listen, some people are making a lot of money doing it. I don't know what you would do on OnlyFans, but maybe you could do Bible study, maybe in the nude or something. I don't know.
Listen, some women are into bald and ugly,
Hey, listen, handsome is subjective.
Yeah.
But listen, gaslighting, we see the lies one after another. So I was like, okay, like I said, we're back to the normal program. Nothing has changed. The only thing that changes, She's not a cop. I think that some people that are anti-police and the leftists love it because she's not a cop, and I think they think they'll get a different response. But she's towing the line already. I mean, talk about how great, kind of like Donlin. Talk about how great Eric Adams is. I mean, I want to know, is that like a prerequisite before they actually get the job? Does Eric tell them, hey, listen, you're going to make sure that you tell the public how great I am. You let them know who the king is. Let them know who the Pope of New York is, because they all seem to do it. Eric is great. Eric's amazing, right? They all do it. They all how amazing he is. He was the best cop ever. His plans are so effective.
Yep. Before we pull up, I'm going to pull up that interview with Jessica Tisch. And, I don't even think it's an interview. It's a speech in front of the National Action Network. I was just messing around. I wasn't feeling well yesterday, so I was messing around. I put in Grok, I said, describe New York's finest retired and unfiltered podcast. Grok is X's AI. So it says, New York's finest retired and unfiltered podcast is a podcast hosted by John D. Macari Jr. and Eric S. Dyms, both retired NYPD lieutenants. Here are some key elements that describe the podcast. Focus: New York City life and politics. The podcast delves into everyday life and politics happening in New York City, offering insights from the perspective of former law enforcement officers. NYPD Insight. It examines the operations, culture, and challenges within the NYPD, providing an insider's view that's not typically accessible to the public. Crime discussion. True crime stories from their experience on the job are shared, often presenting a perspective that contrasts with how these events are reported in the media. Style and tone. Unfiltered and direct, as the name suggests. The hosts aim to provide unfiltered, honest views, often without the polish or censorship that might be present in mainstream media discussions about policing. Conversational. The format is typically conversational, with the host discussing topics at length, sometimes inviting guests who can provide additional insight or viewpoints. Key topics: police policies and practices. They critique or discuss various policies affecting law enforcement, from the use of force to community policing initiatives. Political influence on policing. The podcast often touches upon how political decisions impact police work, including funding and oversight and legislative changes. Personal stories. Both hosts share anecdotes from their career, giving listeners a personal look into the life of an NYPD officer. Current events. They react to and analyze current events, especially those involving law enforcement, crime trends, and legal changes in New York City. Audience engagement. Community building. There's an effort to engage with their audience, encouraging feedback and fostering community of listeners who have an interest or in connection to law enforcement. Social media presence. The podcast leverages social media platforms like X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube for promotion, live chats, and further engagement with their audience. Controversial elements. The hosts do not shy away from discussing controversial topics, including the political climate around policing, the effects of the defund movement, vaccine mandates, and their fallout with the NYPD. Their views sometimes align with conservative critiques of progressive policies, particularly those they see as detrimental to law enforcement, morale, or effectiveness. Availability. The podcast can be listened to on various platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcast directories, making it widely accessible. Purpose. They aim to educate listeners about the real-world aspects of policing, challenges what they perceive as misconception about law enforcement, and provide a platform for former officers to voice their experience and opinions without institutional constraints. Overall, New York's finest, retired and unfiltered, is not just a storytelling platform, but also a medium for critique, discussion, and advocacy concerning law enforcement, New York City governments, and the broader social issues affecting the city and its police force. I read that. It came out in about 3 seconds. I asked Grok, describe the podcast. This is what it spit out in 3 seconds. And I said, holy crap, this thing described it better than I could ever describe it. What do you think? Like, what do you think about that?
I think it's pretty damn good. It's actually spot on. I think it's very complimentary, but I think it's also very fair. I think it's spot on. And it goes on to say what exactly we always reiterate and regurgitate on this podcast. It's opinions based on anecdotal experience, unfiltered. It's just our opinions. And what's great about it is it says that we welcome friends, listeners, we welcome conversations, we welcome controversial topics, that we don't shy away, and we're having real conversations. It solidifies that we're having real conversations. I love it. You know, I consider myself a good writer, but that's outstanding. I think it's spot on, and it really delved into the different aspects of this podcast and shows that we really, at this point, have created a new genre of policepedia. There's no doubt in my mind, brother. I love it. I think it's outstanding.
Yeah, I was like, I couldn't, I was like, wow. I was actually blown away by it. I was like, wow, it described it very well. 3 seconds. Crazy. So, all right. So here is Jessica Tisch. Appears to be kissing the ring of the race baiter, divisionist, John Shell's good friend, the Reverend Al Sharpton. So let's get a little bit into this.
And we fought for correct policing. And I was saying to the mayor when he appointed Jessica Tisch, the police commissioner, her sensitivity, she was sanitation, was important because you need the balance. But don't let people stereotype our community that we are just criminals that are against police. We're not criminals. We're law-abiding citizens. We want to be protected and respected like any other community. And I remember when de Blasio was mayor, first place that the police commissioner, he appointed Bill Bratton. And Bratton and I fussed and argued. I'd marched on Bratton, but he came here. And that Saturday morning, we heard what he had to say. And we're going to work with the mayor and the police to deal with this whole issue of youth violence and guns. 7-year-old kids getting shot. Thank God she didn't die. A couple of blocks from our headquarters, you can't ignore that. And if it was the other way around, we'd have been marching. And now we got to stand up together. So I asked the new police commissioner if she would come and address our community in a few minutes. She said, well, I don't start till Monday, Reverend, so I'll be there Saturday. This is our first outing as police commissioner in our community. Let's welcome the new police commissioner, City of New York, Commissioner Jessica Tisch.
Before we hear from her, what do you think about this guy's comments?
Well, it's typical Al Sharpton race-baiting, divisive commentary. It's so divisive. Our people, we're not criminals. They're saying we're criminals. I don't know what you're talking about. Who is saying the black community are all criminals? We've never. I mean, who's saying that? It's so divisive. It's just inflammatory. That's what Al Sharpton does. Listen, zebras don't change their stripes, and Al Sharpton has never changed his stripes. He's the same person. He's divisive, and he's boxed Jessica Tisch into a position where she now has to make a statement in line. If you're willing to go there to make a statement, he just put you in and boxed you in. He just led you in to where this is going. That's exactly what he did. So if anybody thinks he's a moron, he's not. He's smart. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's manipulating the crowd. He's manipulating the public, and he's also manipulating the speech. So I think he's smart. He's a grifter, but he's smart. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, no, he's and at this point, like, listen, you're the police commissioner. You should reach out to community advocates and all that. But at this point, honestly, Al Sharpton's irrelevant. He's a has-been. You know, we're gonna march on you. Do it. Nobody cares. Nobody cares anymore, guy. You're nobody. You're nobody. And the marchers and the protesters out there, they're not following you no more. You don't have the community support that you once did. You just don't. You just don't. This ain't 1980, brother. You ain't wearing your tracksuits no more. You ain't got your Sergio Tacchini on, your Jerry curls. Nobody's really coming out for you like that anymore. It's just not happening. So he's completely irrelevant. I have no problem with the police commissioner going to speak here, but he's not the rite of passage. He's nobody. He's just like the rest of us. He's a community person, just like the rest of us. His opinion matters just as much as your opinion, just as much as your opinion and all of our opinions. I'm sick of this man being put on a stage. I've been watching him since I'm 8 years old divide New York City. Since I'm 8 years old, try to race bait and divide this city. And honestly, he's done nothing for his people. He's a complete failure He wants to talk about ending youth gun violence. What have you been doing for 44 years? It's disgusting. Where have you been while the rise in crime? Where are you? It's an absolute joke. So to go here and kiss his ring, listen, I'm all for reaching out. I'm with you. Let's have the conversations. I'm not kissing this guy's ring. It's not happening. I'll go there. I'll speak to anybody. I'll speak with anybody. That's how I am, but I'm not kissing his ring. It's not happening. He is a divisionist, race baiter. I've been watching this man since I'm 8 years old. I'm sick of hearing his voice. It's and at this point he's irrelevant. You're not marching on nobody, guy. You're not getting the numbers. You're just not. You're just not. You don't got it no more. You're not.
Good morning, everyone. Reverend Sharpton, thank you for the opportunity to speak with everyone here at National Action Network's House of Justice. For more than 3 decades, your organization has been an outspoken voice of conscience in our country, a beacon that shines light on injustice near and far. You have lifted up the community and moved us all forward as a city and as a nation, and helped affect change at the highest levels of government and power. And I believe that Mayor Adams, who has been with you in this fight since the beginning, knows that I can help in your ongoing efforts. I thank the mayor deeply for the immense confidence he continues to show in me. With 17 years in, I am a longtime servant of this city. For the past 3 years, I ran the Department of Sanitation, and for 2 years before that, I ran the city's Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications. Now I am your newly minted commissioner of the New York City Police Department. It is not my first time at the NYPD either. For 12 years, I worked as a counterterrorism analyst and later as head of the department's technology bureau. And what I firmly believe is that everyone in our city, no matter where you live, no matter what you do, deserves the same thing: to be safe walking around your neighborhood, going to school, to work, to church, and you deserve to feel safe. You deserve, as every New Yorker does, to be confident to live your lives with peace of mind, with dignity, and with stability. Everything that our government promises: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. Everything starts with public safety. It starts with us. That is our job in the NYPD. Every day and every night, our job is to make you safe, to make you feel safe, and to improve your quality of life. And to do that with respect, and to do that in collaboration with you, the people of New York City. Now, overall crime across our city, including shootings, murders, burglaries, grand larcenies, and stolen vehicles, is down 10 months in a row this year. But we also know.
So that's wrong. She lied. First lie. It's been around 10 months, down 10 months. Everything's been down 10 months. Wrong. Update. Everything's been updated. Time for an update. News channels go. They updated their crimes, and crimes are no longer up, but she's pushing the narrative. What do you think about her opening so far?
I'm disgusted, first of all. This is the second lie, because she said this when Eric Adams said she was going to be appointed as commissioner. She said that crime was down to pre-pandemic levels, and the lie just continues. That's why I'm saying we are back to the same program. Nothing has changed. And I'm going to say this right now, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for it. She's a bum, too, for saying that. You know, to be an academic, to be in the position that she is, as smart as she is, the connections that she has, you know, with a family with the Lowe's hotels, the money, the people that she has behind her, to say, you know, to allow Al Sharpton to box you into it. Now you have to talk about Al Sharpton and praise him, and to say he's the beacon that shines light. Are you kidding me? He's the beacon. He's of high praise, because that's what a beacon is. He's someone of high praise. He's been nothing but divisive. He's a race baiter. He's taking money from his people. He didn't help his own people. And I'm sure there's a lot of black people out there that are in complete opposition and find him as a polarizing figure. He's weaponized He's weaponized and utilized the deaths of young black men to propel his own career, to make money. That's what he does. He makes money off the deaths of young black men. That's what he does. He doesn't care. And, smart black people, good, hard-working black people out there, most black people, they know that Al Sharpton is full of crap. He's harping on people that are low informed. Black people know. White people know. Hispanic people know that he's full of crap. She boxed herself into it. I think he's completely racist to his own people. He's insulting them to say, oh, people think you're all criminals. No, they don't. No, they don't. He talks like it's 1970. We've evolved far past that. I don't see the racism that he's talking about, especially in New York City. New York City is such a melting pot. It's the most cosmopolitan city. And Jessica Tisch to say these things and praise Al Sharpton? Are you serious? If anything, you should have said, you know what, Al Sharpton, I'll speak first, and then I'll leave. But for him, to allow him to speak and then box you into these statements, and then to praise him and say he's the beacon, and then talk about how crime is down for 10 months, lie, gaslighting. She's towing the same line. We're back to the same program. Nothing has changed. The police department is going to continue at the same path it does right now. Eric Adams knows what he's doing.
100%. He just Al Sharpton's only relevant to Eric Adams. And Chris Arnold says he's given out low-key warnings when he was speaking. That's what he always does. That's why he held that prayer on the steps of City Hall. That's why he held that prayer. That was a low-key warning. If you city council better not go against the mayor, or they're gonna remove their support from them. This is what he does. We've basically given him power. Jessica Tisch didn't wake up on Saturday morning and say, "Oh, let me go speak to Al Sharpton." Eric Adams called her and said, "I think it's time you go to speak to Al Sharpton." Logic's Finest says, "I was at the protest in Brooklyn when he got stabbed. Race hustler ever since the Tawana Brawley hoax." Yeah, I lived on 68th Street between 20th and 21st. I was 8 years old. I was out on my stoop that day. My mother was going to take me to the candy store that was up the block from my house on 68th Street that day. And my mother was sharp-eyed like I've always been. And she said, "Hey, there were these two white guys on my block that we'd never seen before, ever." She goes, "They were getting ready to protest, Al Sharpton." She goes, "You ever see these two guys before?" I'm like, "Nah, I never seen them." And she's like, "Yeah, I'll take you tomorrow to the candy store. Let's go the other way." And we turned around. We went back to our apartment. And sure enough, those were the two guys that stabbed Al Sharpton that day. But yeah, every Sunday, he marched in front of my house. He lined up in front of my house. He marched, and he created division over the disgusting murder of Yusef Hawkins that was racially motivated by one individual. But they demonized the entire neighborhood out of it. And there were a lot of lies that were still being told till today about that incident that it disgusts me. And that's what really, that incident, the murder of Yusef Hawkins really shaped my political ideologies right from the get-go. And I saw how people like Eric Adams, I saw politicians like Chuck Schumer, and I saw how the media twist things and use things to divide us by telling lies. So yeah, real pivotal point in my life. Terrible things. Let's go further on.
Before you go further, John, I just want to say, she's also telling the public, she's saying, when, her first day in office, when she spoke to Rosanna Scotto, and she said, I want because Rosanna Scotto asked her, well, you've never been a cop. So how do you get the support of the rank and file? And she said, she's been in city and state government, and that she wants them to know that she stands for them and she has their back. How do you have the back of the cops when you're out here praising Al Sharpton? Because Al Sharpton has been nothing but a polarizing figure for the NYPD. He's pretty much created the NYPD before George Floyd as its own race, referring to them as blue, as being its own race. He's been nothing but an anti-police advocate, create anti-police rhetoric, anti-police sentiment the entire time that we know Al Sharpton in the public. So for her to say that she has the back of the cops and stands with them, and then you're going to praise Al Sharpton, well, you know what? She's full of it. Just another liar, towing the line. So you know what? If there was any rank and file, if she has your back, here's the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So here we go. Let's see what else you got.
That stubborn pockets of crime, violence, and social disorder persist in many areas that still desperately need us. My pledge to you is that we will do everything in our power to stamp out these pockets by working alongside all of you and all of our other partners in the community. And together, we will usher in a new era of crime and disorder elimination in every New York City neighborhood. We will achieve this with specific strategies. One, the NYPD is a data-driven organization, as you know, and we have the very best people in the business. They help develop precision policing techniques that allow us to put officers in the hotspots where crime occurs. But that alone doesn't eliminate crime. Our strategies are only as strong as the relationships that we continue to strengthen with New Yorkers. And those relationships are founded on the trust that we vow to continue building. Deploying our resources in this way against the drivers of violent crime and in concert with our community partners will remain front and center to our vision. Two, technology. When I arrived at police headquarters for my first job there years ago, typewriters still sat on desks. But working shoulder to shoulder alongside our cops, we moved the NYPD into the 21st century. We gave our police officers the tools they needed to better serve you and your community. We gave them body-worn cameras and smartphones so that information about fighting crime can get directly into the hands of police in the field, and so that they can act in real time to apprehend those who create violence and disorder that disrupts innocent people who are just living their lives, trying to do right by themselves and their families, their loved ones, and their neighbors. Three, we need to do more to address the mental health crisis in our city. Mayor Adams has been very clear that this must be an essential piece of our crime-fighting agenda. Treatment and support networks must be strengthened and funded. More and better educational opportunities have to be made available to everyone in every community. We definitely require a whole of government approach that will include collaboration with partner organizations and individual leaders, hospitals, nonprofits, clergy, community councils, social activists, violence interrupters working within the mayor's crisis management system, and of course, everyday New Yorkers. Four, more officers. Increasingly, we are recruiting NYPD officers from many of the neighborhoods that need us most. And residents are seeing more and more that their local cops look like them and that their police understand the needs of the communities that they so proudly serve. In fact, the NYPD is a majority-minority police department these days, with almost 61% of our officers identifying as minorities. The same is true for more than 85% of the NYPD's civilian workforce. As a lifelong New Yorker, I am looking forward to doing more on those fronts. During the same conversation in which Mayor Adams told me I was going to be police commissioner, he gave me another gift, the promise of 1,600 more police officers coming online next year. More cops.
All right, Eric, I'm falling asleep. I don't even know if I can listen to this. I don't even know if I can listen to this anymore. She's reading from a piece of paper. You know, Drone Ranger got it. Jessica Tisch, the $1 billion Donlin.
Yeah, all I know is, oh my God, I'm sitting here like, here goes the white guilt. Oh, thank God, 85% of the civilian force is minorities. 61% is minorities. It's a majority minority, the police department. Let's get rid of all those knuckle draggers. Thank you, Jessica Tisch. Jessica Tisch, more evidence-based information, solidified. Let's get rid of all those knuckle draggers. John, thank God we got rid of you. Thank God we got rid of Eric Dim. Thank God we got rid of Sal Greco. Thank God we got rid of Marlon Bethel. All those knuckle draggers are gone. We're moving in the right direction. And you know what? Jessica Tisch does she do math? Because she's been toting this idea that 1,600 new recruits is going to bring the police department where we're at. We have a mass exodus going on right now, and 1,600 police officers going to the academy are not going to fill that mass exodus. And out of those 1,600, how many are actually going to graduate, and how many are actually going to stay on the job? Because we know within 6 months of graduating the academy, we get a high percentage of men and women that decide this is not for me. So how many of those 1,600 will actually be there? Tom Joyce, shout out to you. $20. Oh, okay.
But thank Tom Joyce anyway.
Tom Joyce, thank you so much in retirement. Yeah, but listen, like I said, white guilt. I'm disgusted right here. Here we go. It's like we heard this song and dance before. Nothing has changed except we have the first female Jewish police commissioner. That's all. Is she considered minority? I don't know.
Yeah, so we've heard the same speech over and over again. Eric Adams gave her the gift, 1,600 cops next year, which isn't going to do a dent in the amount of cops you lose this year. Crime's down. Actually, it's not. Arrests are up. All right, good. You guys are doing your job. You should be. But that doesn't mean anything. No different than Tom Donlin, no different from Ed Caban, no different from Keechant Sewell. Crime continues to rise under the Eric Adams administration. Is it wholly the fault of the NYPD? No, but it's partly. There's some reasons in there why crime, there's some reasons in there. Partly because of things like this, where they pander to most of the stuff and they downgrade charges and they don't properly take reports. They misrepresenting crime reports, right? You're misrepresenting crime, which means that when you're arresting people, you're ultimately dumbing down their charge before you even get down to the DA's office for them to dumb down the charge even further. So the NYPD is not 100% innocent in all of this either. It's all the political. And here you go again, just more speech reading. Like, when are we going to get a police commissioner that could go up and talk to the public without looking at a piece of paper? Like, when? Is that ever going to happen again? Or do we need people to get these speeches that nobody believes, nobody even cares about, and nobody wants to even hear? Everybody's like, what is this? Like, what is going on? I bet everyone in this room is like, seriously? She can't even, like, there's not, like, you have to read from a piece of paper? Oh, yeah, they're the men and women in the New York City. Oh, but she does the women and the men like Keechant Sewell did. Wow. Real flair there. Real personality.
Yeah, you gotta reverse it. Put the women first, when it comes to the police department to meet that 30-30 quota or that 30-30 goal. Listen, I'm disgusted with this speech. I agree with you. I think that you or myself could stand up there and spitball a speech right away. Listen, here's the bottom line. Here's my plan. But right away, they all go to the same playbook. Tom Donlin, and you know what? Shout out, who said it again? Drone Ranger, the billionaire Tom Donlin. Yeah. Another placeholder, she's going to be there to praise Eric Adams, because that's what Eric Adams needs. Eric Adams needs to be complimented, told how great he is. He puts people in place to do that. That's their job. You know what? From now on, if Jessica Tisch doesn't work out, for the next person out there, if you decide you want to become the police commissioner of the New York City Police Department, your job is to hold up a picture of Eric Adams and talk about how great he is, just like they do in North Korea, and they talk about Kim Jong-un. That's your job. Just talk about how great Eric Adams is. You need a whole speech written out for that? That was ridiculous. Again, she's towing the same line as Tanya Meisenholder, the same line of Eric Adams. This whole diversity, equity, inclusion, diversify the police department, throw in a little white guilt. Absolutely. Jessica, why don't you tell them, hey, I'm the first Jewish female police commissioner. Here's what I'm going to do. And she doesn't even realize what she's saying. She's actually going against what Al Sharpton wants, right? Because she talks about we're going to put cops in spots where they need it, in hot zones. And where do you think those hot zones are? Let's be honest. It's not race. It's the reality, okay? In high crime areas. And unfortunately, some of these high crime areas are predominantly black because we look at the numbers. So she's telling us, Sharpton, we're going to flood more cops into some of these neighborhoods that you supposedly stand for. And he's in complete opposition to that. He's in complete opposition of police omnipresence and intrusive police work. So she doesn't even know what she's saying. This is just complete word salad. It sounds great. You know what she is, John? You know what she is? She's a shiny new quarter. That's what she is. It's all smiles right now. She's the new face. People, they get something new. But, once all those smiles and that quarter starts to become a little dull, it's back to the old program. She's a shiny quarter. That's it.
That's it. Yeah, that's all it was. So total disappointment to me so far. I thought, she had the ability, but she's just been a mouthpiece for Eric Adams. Eric Adams continues to disappoint, right? He continues. Mind you, he's keeping thousands of people out of work right now. He's trying to get thousands of illegals to work at the same time and to vote. So he's keeping people that paid into the system out of work. The people that lied that they caught, he fought for, right? He was like, nah, it's what it is. What's the big deal? People got to pay their bills, So he loves low integrity in the police department. If you lie, you will rise through the ranks of the NYPD, right? Because you could help push the crime is down narrative and lie about all the things that are going on, misrepresent crime data. So you'll be well honored in the police department. And then this happens. Richie Torres, who, by the way, is another defund the police advocate who all of a sudden is turning MAGA Richie. So I'm not buying any of the nonsense that Richie Torres is pushing either. He's looking to either be the governor or the mayor. So he's coming out swinging as like a moderate conservative when really he's a defund the police politician. He always was anti-NYPD. You erased a lot of your tweets though, Richie. So shout out to you, but I remember all of them. So don't worry about it. I got them saved. And anyway, so Richie Torres slams the Adams administration for not firing his staffer who was tearing down Israeli hostage posters. So a woman that works for Eric Adams was caught ripping down Israeli hostage posters. And then when someone was filming her, she assaulted them. She allegedly assaulted them. What do you think about that, Eric? And Eric Adams not doing anything about it.
Well, I thought it was kind of funny, right, and ironic that supposedly that the response was that they're going to send her for some type of multicultural training. I mean, like, isn't that the reason you got the job, that you're supposed to understand multicultural communities? I mean, you're supposed to be the person that's dealing with diversity, but that's a response. Let's give a multicultural training. So it goes back to everything we said. Every appointment by Eric Adams, everyone in Eric Adams' administration is there by nepotism, doesn't have the qualifications, doesn't have the criteria. So the knee-jerk reaction is, you know what? She doesn't know how to diversify. Let's get the training. Come on. This is laughable. Another bum. Get that bum out.
Yeah, and then who else? Gail Brewer. You gotta love Gail. Another defund the police advocate. So city council, been in city council forever. She, comes out about the wild West Side, Upper West Side, right? What do we got there? We got robbery is up 31%. Hold on, do I have it up? Okay. Robbery's up 31%. Felony assaults up 14%. Burglaries up 31%. Grand larcenies up 6%. Retail thefts up 22%. Shootings are up 150%. Shooting victims are up 250%. So Gail Brewer decides, you know what? Maybe I should start doing my job. So she says, we need more police patrols on the Upper West Side amid rising violent crime. Where you been for the last 4 years, Gail? I contacted Police Commissioner Tisch on November 22nd to request more officers in the 2-0, the 2-4, the Central Park, and Midtown North precincts, and will continue advocating for greater police presence and mental health services. But I thought the drones were going to solve all this. What's going on? I don't know. It's weird. So all of a sudden, now the defund the police advocate, Gail Brewer, now wants more cops. It's so weird how this works. It's so weird. It's like all these politicians do is lie and lie and lie and lie. And then when they lie, and when after they lie to us, then they just backpedal on it. No. I actually like more cops. I didn't want less cops. Now I want more cops.
Man, I tell you, I was never into politics. Wasn't my wheelhouse. But ever since we've been doing the podcast and seeing towards the end of my tenure with my career, just completely affected by politics, and just see everything change. And I was, I had taken a seat back my last year, not being outside doing intrusive police work as much because I was facing all these administrative charges from CCRB. And when you start to really open up this can of worms and you look around and you look at politicians like, oh my God, how do people vote for these people? It's like, no, we have no idea what to trust or what they say. They say one thing one day, the next thing they say something completely different, and they try to weave it together and justify their own lies. They lie so much that their lies have become their own truth. It's ridiculous. So, it's like John is getting my sickness over here. So, how you feeling, by the way?
Nah, I feel all right. I'm good. We'll start wrapping this up. But this is Gail Brewer, though. Now she's calling for more cops. But this is candidate Gail Brewer in 2021 when she's running.
Oh,
Here's
yeah.
the question. You ready, Eric? Do you support reducing the budget of the NYPD? And if so, by how much? Right? Do you support defunding the police? Right? That's what the question really is, right? Here's Gail Brewer's response. Yes. To repurpose towards social workers and violence interrupters and programs that focus on alternatives to incarceration. Wow. Sounds a lot different from MAGA Gail Brewer. Hey, welcome, MAGA. Hey, Gail. Thanks for following the podcast, by the way. We appreciate it.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. It really has become like a defining moment, right? It was a defining moment for policing with the George Floyd era and all the knee-jerk reactions, all the legislation has changed. But it really is a defining moment. Now that Donald Trump is coming to office and we see pre-Donald Trump New York City politicians, and now we see this post-Donald Trump New York City politicians. They're all magging out, all supporting the police department. Yeah, let's get more cops out there. Why wasn't it a good idea before? What has changed? Now it's a good idea. Now that crime is out of control, we have an out-of-control crisis with illegal military age males, and now we need more cops. Again, that's why I said the Democrats, these leftist socialist maniacs, they administer the Munchausen syndrome. They create all the problems, and then they want to cure the symptoms that they created. They want to treat the symptoms, right, with the same problems that they caused. You know what? We didn't need cops then. Caused the problem. Crime's out of control. We need all this legislation. But now let's treat it with more cops. And I won't be surprised if we'll start saying, if we hear them say we need to start changing some of the legislation. The same legislation that they stood behind. But that's New York City politics.
Yeah, no, that's basically what Eric Adams has been doing his whole tenure so far, is knocking the legislation that he supported. And no one even talks about it. Like, no one even blinks an eye. It's like, no, Eric Adams is against it. It's like, okay, so but why was he for it? Like, again, he's against it now because it's obviously doesn't work. It's easy, but like, why did he support it? Like, why is he now against it? Have we asked him? Is it so hard to ask the question? So it's just so funny, man. You know, it's like the whole of New York City is just it's literally it's the place of low information. It's low information, misinformation, disinformation. There's nothing that's the truth. Nothing is the truth when it comes to this. Here's our good buddy Sam Antar. Let's see what he's got to say. Memo. Commissioner Tish's selective statistical storytelling. Dear NYPD Police Commissioner Tish, I couldn't help but notice your rather creative approach to sharing crime statistics with the public. While you're certainly enthusiastic about highlighting the decrease in murders, and yes, that's generally good news, it seems you develop an interesting blind spot when it comes to the key metrics. Curious how those rising numbers for rape, robbery, felony assaults, and total violent crime didn't make it into your presentation. I'm sure it was just an oversight. These things happen when you're busy selecting which statistics to emphasize, right? Perhaps in the future, we could aim for a more complete picture. After all, New Yorkers are quite capable of processing comprehensive crime data, even when it comes to fit neatly into a positive narrative. Just a thought from someone who believes in showing the whole dashboard, not just a dial that reads progress. Warmest regards, Sam Antar. P.S. Below are the numbers you left out. The NYPD reports that violent crime has risen by 3.9% to date this year, increased by 25.4% since New York City Mayor Adams assumed office, and escalated by 31.2% since 2019, the year preceding the COVID pandemic. If current trends persist, the number of violent crimes in New York City is projected to surpass the totals of any year since 2002.
Who made this comment? It's hilarious. Chris Arnold, shout out, says, oh boy, Sam has latched on to Jesse's math. Yeah, you know, Jessica Tisch is an academic. She's an elite, but you know what? Now it doesn't matter. Her math is politician math. She's doing political math. And political math, Eric Adams math, is not the same as actual math. It's called gaslighting 101. And that's what this administration does. It just lies constantly, because Jessica Tisch, one thing is a fact. She's an academic and she's intelligent. So she knows exactly what she's doing. I don't want to believe, I'm not going to believe that she doesn't know she's lying. She's new to the office. She knows she's lying. She said it herself. She's data driven. So she's not going to regurgitate information unless she has the data. So let's stamp that out right now. So Jessica Tisch is completely giving out hogwash and gaslighting the public. Just another lie. Shout out to you, Sam Antar. I love it. Follow him on X. Listen, like and subscribe to the podcast. Share this out, please. We're still live. Share it out. We appreciate it.
Yeah, but let's get ready to wrap it up. All in all, we walked through why I'm suing. I don't think anyone should have been shocked by it. I mean, I've been talking about it for 3 years. It was obviously the last choice, right? I had really no other further choice at this point. I've been advocating to both conservative and progressive politicians for 3 years, as well as the mayor in New York City, as well as the governor of the state of New York. I've done it at my own peril. It's cost me much heartache and much money. And Eric Adams has left no choice other than for all of us to just continue to file lawsuits. And he continues to fight on grounds that he's already lost on. The whole mandate was deemed arbitrary and capricious over 2 years ago. We were all supposed to be reinstated with back pay over 2 years ago when we weren't. This is all the makings of Eric Adams. So as time goes on, it's just the more and more money that will be owed to us. It's absolutely ridiculous at this point. He should end this thing immediately. He refuses to. And while he doesn't, I suggest you guys all seek attorneys. Everybody that was harmed by that. I've been doing it for 3 years. I've been working on this for a long time. I continue to work to seek other class actions. I believe that there are other players that should be implicated and should be and are problems. I believe the unions are a huge problem. I believe they fail to act. I believe they fail to represent. And I believe at some point litigation should be taken against them as well. So I'm getting a lot of messages. I will try to respond to all of them. I don't know that I will. I get numerous messages every day, and it's very overwhelming. I try to help out anybody I can, but for anyone who I don't, it's not because I didn't see your message or because I don't want to respond to you. It's just because I'm getting too many. There's absolutely no way. I recommend you continuously do what I did. I called attorneys for 3 years. 3 years. And then obviously as data comes out, more and more data comes out, there are more things, right? We have Jay Varma in his own words. There's no difference, the architect of the mandate. There's no difference between me and somebody who took it. He said it. I didn't say it. He's the doctor. He's the one that put it together. He's the one that said it. There's no difference. While he was out having drug-fueled sex orgies. Didn't matter. He didn't care about your status. He didn't care what your status was. So why did you care about my status when I went to go eat or where I stayed employed? So shout out to Freak Off Jay Varma. And then Tanya Meisenholder's comments come on the podcast, come in and out, and we learn about that. And more data becomes available, and obviously situations change, and things that we thought were in the past come to be proven to what it is. And the more and more litigation that we see, the more and more court cases that we follow, the more you see that everything they did was illegal. It was all illegal. It was all arbitrary. It was all capricious. And they did it. And not only did they do it, they did it in discriminatory fashion.
Well, listen, the bottom line is this: when it comes to Jessica Tisch, I want to say this, that she is an academic, comes from an elite family, and she talks about majority with the police department on the uniform side and also the civilian side. And you know what? Shame on her, because she knows she's not only the second female, but she's the first Jewish female billionaire heiress to take the position as police commissioner. And she's failed to actually state that fact. So she's willing to put aside that label because they don't want to announce that label to be in this position. Because I heard people, talk about how great she is. She's this shiny quarter. Jessica Tisch doesn't have to be doing this. She's a true patriot. Well, so is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a billionaire also. He doesn't have to be doing this, and he's faced extreme adversity. Could she handle the same adversity? She's already failed on its face right now. She's not willing to say, hey, I've been honored as a second female, but I'd like to also note that I'm the first female Jewish police commissioner, and I would like to also honor the Jewish heritage. But she's put that aside. So again, same horse, different color. We're back to the same program. Nothing has changed. I mean, think about it. Can we think about prior police commissioners under a different mayoral administration? Were they toting mayors as much as we hear from these police commissioners? Every time there's a speech, it's several times in the speech, oh, Eric Adams has made it clear his plan is this, and that's what their job is to do. Be placeholders and praise Eric Adams. That's what their job ultimately is. Hey, John, shout out to you. You know, whether you're compensated, vindicated, or even ever reinstated, which I know you want to go back, but if that option is brought along, you know what? Shout out to you, brother, for standing up and having a fight in this, because you represent them. And when I say them, anyone else that was discarded, the other knuckle draggers out there, and they represent you. So, again, Tom Anthony says Eric's doing it for crumbs. Absolutely. This will all go into crumbs. So, listen, thank you so much for being with us. Friends, listen to the podcast. Thank you for dipping into your pocket, buying us coffee and donuts. We appreciate it. And we'll be back tomorrow. Business as usual, just as Jessica Tisch. And Jessica Tisch, we could actually speak from the heart. I hope you could do that also.
Yeah, 100%. So new boss, just like the old boss. And you know what? If I get reinstated, I will go back for a little bit. 100%. Bring me back. I get to end out the way that everybody else gets to end their career out. Like, right? Everybody gets to pick and choose when they're going to retire. Maybe I'll get to finally pick and choose when I retire. Yeah, 100%.
Hey, John,
yeah.
Maybe you could go to khaki pants unit. Maybe you go into CRT.
I mean, they could certainly use some training. They could certainly use some positive supervision, some actual adult leadership. Yeah, I think that they could. Yeah, I would love to do it. I would do some khaki pants. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so that's it, people. Listen, we'll be back tomorrow live 8:05. Appreciate you for staying with us. And yeah, onward and upward. There we go.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.